Welcome everyone to the webinar of All Things LinkedIn. Thank you to everyone for being present this late afternoon till evening. And we'd like to thank Samantha, Maxi, and Stewart for taking out their time out of their busy schedules to be with us this Friday afternoon as well. So just to begin and discuss the agenda for today, we will be discussing how LinkedIn can help you market yourself and also navigate and how to navigate on your LinkedIn. So we have to remember that LinkedIn is like your personal branding. So whenever your LinkedIn profile is suitable, employers will be excited to want to talk to you. So just a brief description of what we will be talking about. The first point will be with Stewart, and he'll be telling us how to rock our profile. That will be about 40 minutes. So we'll get many tips on what to add, what to exclude within our LinkedIn profile. Secondly, it will be Maxi Williams, and she's from Allen Gray along with Samantha. She will be starting with what recruiters look out for in your LinkedIn profile. So look out for that because if one day you want to be in LinkedIn, you need to pay attention. That will be about 20 minutes. Then the last part will be personal branding. I believe you don't want to miss this one because Samantha will be sharing a lot of tips on how you can brand yourself, even if it's not on LinkedIn, anywhere you are, and present yourself as a professional person. That will be also about 30 minutes. Now, after you've gotten this, just a few house rules. Please, when you enter, mute, mute and unmute yourself if you have a question or anything like that. And the speakers have asked that you please switch on your videos if it is possible. That will help them to be able to interact with you, to see your emotions and what you are thinking. And that will help them to be able to reach out to you even more. Now, many questions will be answered as on the RSVP you send through your question. There you send the question which you want to be answered, and I believe the speakers will be answering it throughout their presentations. If, if any more questions, please do send it to the chat box, or you can send it to our emails, and it will be shared towards the end of the meeting. Now, just to remember that you please must RSVP so that you can receive the additional documents that will be being used within the presentations. And Stuart will be sharing a lot of tips in those documents, which will surely help you. Now, without further ado, I think I'm talking too much now. Let's introduce our first speaker, How to Rock Your Profile with Stewart Samkange. So his mission is to make the working world a better place, one HR director at a time. So he manages some of LinkedIn's academic talent solutions business across Africa, Central Africa, Southern Eastern Europe. And he does this by providing leadership advice, insights on planning, hiring, engagement, development, and talent across Africa. So now, if you want to achieve some of the skills that you want, please pay attention when Stuart goes through. Some of the other things which he have done, he has many stories which will be interesting to you because he lived in over 7 countries, worked in over those 7 countries. Now, he worked for IBM, Microsoft, Oracle, SAP, SuccessFactors, and now currently for LinkedIn. Now, let's introduce Stuart because I think his LinkedIn profile already speaks for himself. Let him show you how he made his profile like that. Stuart, the virtual stage is yours, please.
Okay, superb. Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you very much for making time. I know it's Friday afternoon and some of us, our energies are low, but this is going to be a good use of your time because we will discuss all things LinkedIn. Let me start off first by introducing myself. My name is Stewart Samkange, proudly from Zimbabwe. I've lived in 7 African countries, and currently I'm residing in Ireland. So I'm streaming from Ireland, reaching out to you in Africa, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. What gives me credibility to talk to you today is that at LinkedIn, across Africa, Central Eastern Europe, and Southern Eastern Europe, I get to work with universities, colleges, institutions like yourselves and help students like yourself get access to economic opportunities. Access to economic opportunities does not just only mean jobs. Because I understand as you're studying today, it might not be to take up employment. It might actually be to be a leader, to be an entrepreneur. So I hope you're tuned into this session. You have seen some of the questions that you've asked. I'm going to try and answer those as best as possible. And what will happen throughout this session is that I will speak to some of the points I'll raise up on the slides, but some of them will be based on my experience. I encourage you to watch the recording afterwards so that you can go through some of the things that I would have put up on the screen and may not have read out, because I know you can read. So let's start the journey of rocking our profile. In order to effectively rock our profiles and build our professional brands, we must understand the world that we're going into, the world that has been disrupted, as you can see around yourself, the world that has increasing competition for resources, increasing competition even to higher skills like yourself. Organizations, if you have the right skills, are competing to get your attention. And the only way they can compete to get your attention is when they fully understand what your career path is, or what your career trajectory is, or what it is that you've learned and brought to the table that will allow them to bring you in as an employee or as a service provider. So it's a competitive world that we're in. It's a world where skills are increasingly more important than actually some of the formal education that we have attained. The skills that we're looking to perhaps if I can ask the moderators to mute everyone and then maybe take people off mute when we do Q&A. It's a little distracting, but nevertheless, I was talking about skills. The world we're in is critically looking for skills that matter, skills that are in demand. As the world continues to automate and transform and leverage technology to do some of the traditional roles that you and I used to go after, accounting, auditing, etc., as technology begins to take over some of those capabilities, what the world is looking for is creative thinkers, people that are able to collaborate, people who are able to take ideas or take multiple pieces of data and bring out a narrative that helps a commercial organization. If you are looking to go into public sector, of course, the same skills matter, the soft skills of you as a human being, how you collaborate, how you coordinate, and of course, how you bring about your thought leadership. It's a disruptive world that we're going into. But the world that matters in this conversation we're having today is the world around LinkedIn. So let us demystify LinkedIn and totally get to understand what value it can bring to us as individuals. Did you know that every single minute, that's right, you heard me, 3 people are hired on LinkedIn. Every second, we got 3 new people joining the platform. In total, there's over 774 million professionals just like yourself, students, alumni, graduates, young professionals looking to go into industry, looking to start organizations, looking to get jobs in organizations where they can bring impact. And those organizations that are represented on LinkedIn are well over 57 million. Think about it. Over 57 million organizations that could potentially hire you or need your service. On LinkedIn, it gives us an opportunity as a young professional to prepare for interviews, to prepare for the world of work, to know what matters in conversations with hiring managers. Where do we get this knowledge? We get this knowledge by joining groups of like-minded professionals in our sector, in our industry, getting to understand the tone and the way that they communicate, getting to understand the challenges they're solving for, getting to understand the best practices, getting to understand what skills we will need in order to shape our career to be successful. Joining groups on LinkedIn is so that you can go in, not to actively say, I'm looking for a job, but to go in and share some of the ideas that you have, to test some of those ideas with other thought leaders, so that by the time you get an opportunity to pitch your company, to pitch your product, to pitch your service, or to even pitch yourself as an individual, you have taken in all these industry insights and are now telling a more compelling professional story. The word professional is important here. Why? Because we interact with multiple social platforms. And I'm sure later on, Sam and Maxi will speak to why it matters that we take care of our identities. Our names are our brand. We need to value them. We need to curate them. We need to ensure that the content that is associated with our names is content that is positive, is content that speaks to the professionals we want to become. So already we're active on other platforms. And on these platforms, we take the opportunity to spend time. We spend time telling the story of what we're doing socially with our social contacts. But when we move over to LinkedIn, when we use our real name, when we document our history, the places we've studied, the people we know, the people we'd like to work for, our tone changes. Our tone tends to take a more professional approach, a more professional tone that speaks to the opportunities we're seeking, that seeks to the opportunities to learn, that seeks to the opportunities to engage, to add value, to share, to start conversations around the things you know or the things you'd like to get to know that would help show you up as a subject matter expert. Maybe not a subject matter expert instantaneously overnight, but to grow to be the professional that you desire to be. So LinkedIn presents us with an opportunity to connect to our alumni, to connect to our family, our friends, to connect to people who can employ us. We don't always have to have a direct connection with those people. We can choose to follow them, which means if I choose to follow a CEO at, say, Virgin, and it's Richard Branson, I don't have to reach out on LinkedIn to connect to him. I can follow him so that as he posts content, I am able to see it in my feed. If you're not having a great LinkedIn experience, it's probably because of the people you follow. It matters. The people we follow determine the news we receive. So we need to follow thought leaders. We need to follow people within our industry. We need to follow companies which we want to work in. We need to follow companies where we want to sell products and services and ideas and solutions. LinkedIn gives us this fantastic platform where we can stay informed. We can use hashtags to search around a given topic. You're preparing for an interview. It's something to do with machine learning, but it's something, the job you're applying for is within the agricultural sector. So what has changed in the agricultural sector, and where's machine learning adding value to that sector? You can search by hashtag. You can search by job titles and find like-minded professionals, read their content, engage with their content, share your perspective, connect up with them. This will help you become an informed individual so that when you're in that interview, your best foot is forward. You're speaking with credibility. If it's the commercial sector you're going to speak to or have an interview with, what matters are probably three things. How I will help you increase your profits, how I'll help you save costs, and what unique value I bring to this job. We need to be intentional about how we prepare for these interviews and how we present ourselves as individuals so that we may get hired. As we said, on LinkedIn, it's a fast-growing population, and it continues to provide value for you as a student, as a young professional looking to enter the world of work. It provides value in that you can look at like-minded professionals already in roles and reach out to them with the intention not to immediately ask for a job, but with the intention to say, let me learn more about your career. How did you get into that role? What additional things did you have to go and learn and acquire as skills to get you into the position that you're in? If you had to look back 20 years in your career, what would you give me as advice or give yourself as advice? Which areas should I focus on harnessing? Because this is where the biggest challenges or problems are in your world. On top of it, we also get the opportunity to follow those companies, to see what it is they're posting, so that we've researched them, we've understood their culture, their values, their problems, their employees. We've understood what they do to develop people. We've understood who their customers are. And when we've understood that, it means when we get into the interview, we're talking about them. We're talking about their situation. We're shown we've done research around their organization and that we've been intentional about applying for this role and that we're not just taking chances. Today's session is really about how to rock your profile, and I want to teach you some quick tips. It is Friday. Maybe I need a water break. Give me a second here. Some tips on how to rock your profile. All right, are you with me? So let's go along. Don't try and do this as we do the session. This is a recorded session. You can watch it afterwards. First of all, when I put up this slide, chances are your eyes were drawn to the visuals on the screen. You were not drawn to the text, even though this is another student in a different geography. Your eyes were drawn to the images. The images that are presented here are images that this individual has chosen to project themselves. So over and above the photograph for themselves, they have a banner image. This is a real estate that is so expensive if you had to pay for it, but it's free. So what image can we associate with our brands that speaks to the industry we want to work in? That speaks to the products and solutions we're offering, that speaks and gives credibility to the skills that I say I have. So maybe it's my final year project. Maybe it's an image showing the volunteer work that I've done and the impact that it had. Maybe it is instruments from the technology or the sector or the faculty that I'm studying in that already presents an image of I am a scientist. Or maybe it's just, as this guy has chosen, to have another image, secondary image of himself, but with a city landscape, already showing you that he has intentions to work maybe in a metropolitan or something to that effect. But ultimately, do you see what's happening here? Is that already we're getting a feeling. Maya Angelou says, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will not forget how you made them feel. So already on our profile, we're giving people a feeling of who we are. We're giving them a holistic view of who we are and why we stand out from the crowd. Next thing is, of course, a profile photograph. Dress for the job that you want to be in. No pets, no dogs, no family, no friends in the photograph. It's your profile. So what image best represents you? I've chosen a black and white photograph because I believe everybody sees color every day. I intentionally, and I see Cornelius has done the same, chose a black and white photograph. You don't have to. But on LinkedIn, there are filters that will allow you to edit your photograph. I chose black and white because I knew that when my clients or you, students, are looking for me, as you scroll through the many people that have posted content on LinkedIn, as you rush through that, you're going to stop at the black and white image, and I arrest your attention. Visuals matter. Human beings process images up to 60,000 times faster than they do process text. So get a great profile photograph. 60% of it can be your face. Dress for the job that you want to be in. And remember, you can use your phone. So if you just got your hair done or you're looking great, have someone within your home or around you take you a great photograph. A warm, welcoming smile already tells the world who you are. I see, Sammy, you're off mute. Is there questions so far, or can I continue? We're good to continue. All right, so let's do this. This is an important part, and it can never be understated. Your education, you've invested in it. You're in this session because you are a student at WITS or you're a graduate, sometimes called an alumni. Right. What we want to do with our LinkedIn profiles is to ensure that our profiles are associated with institutions where we've studied. Why this matters is that we become part of that alumni. And if you really harness the power of the alumni, if you went to the WITS page right now, you would see a link to the alumni, where they work, what they do, where they live, what they studied. This is already giving you the opportunity to reach out to people who are like-minded, who study the same thing as you, who live in the same geography as you, who are already working, and say, what are the problems your company have? What should I study? What are the best practices? How do you interview? When do jobs typically come up and become available in your organization? What thought leadership can I get from you? Could you mentor me? There are so many ways that we can leverage that alumni information. And it's available right here on LinkedIn. So it pays for us to ensure that we put in all the things associated with our educational background, whether it be the awards and things that we've acquired as accreditation to the investments that we've made. Next is your work experience. And I know some of you are sitting there saying, Stewart, I've just started. I'm a student. What work experience? Well, let's think about it. Have you done a holiday job? Have you volunteered in a family business? Have you done part-time internship? Have you assisted within the university and run a student body within the institution? How does that begin to tell the story of you working? And when it comes to work, we're not to put in the description in terms of a laundry list of things that we've done, but we are to put in the story of that work. So first of all, this is a global audience. Not everyone knows the university. Not everyone knows your dad's business. Not everyone knows that incubator hub that you volunteered for. So the first sentence is, this is who I was with. And then specifically within that organization, this is what I did, the value that I brought. Make it a story, make it succinct. Use terminology that matters to business. So did you increase revenues? Did you reduce costs? Did you improve processes? What is it that you did that brought tangible value? What impact did it have? And what did you learn from that role? Briefly, succinct. Because from the job title, people can ascertain what you did on a day-to-day basis. But what we want to do is flesh out that story into what you brought as value. And we're able to add more color to our profiles and become real rock star profiles by adding images, PDFs, infographics, photographs, visuals that bring to story the life of that organization. So it was your parents' business, but you can take images of that. It is a place where you volunteered. Because of COVID, you can't go there anymore to take photographs. Well, look on YouTube, look on LinkedIn, look on the web. What has that organization told as its story? And if they've told that as their story, can you use it on your profile? Because it's already in the public domain. This brings your profile to life so that hiring managers, so that recruiters are intrigued to want to have a conversation with you and say, I saw you said you worked here. I see you said you brought this impact. There was this one particular video you added. Tell me more. You want to bring that element of curiosity, engagement to want to speak to you. Next is, of course, our volunteer experience. A lot of people understate this. A lot of people overlook this, including working professionals who are currently in jobs. As a student, as especially a WITS student, you getting insights in terms of what matters. Your volunteer experience will drive up to 6 times more traffic to your profile if you add it. Why? Because personally, I want to hire someone I can be stuck in an airport with. I want to hire someone I can be stuck in an elevator with. I want to hire someone who gives to the world without expecting return. I want to hire someone who is contributing to making the world a better place. So if you do volunteer, this could be the area where you go in and put in your volunteer skills. That could be the spark of a conversation that matters. Why? Because companies are doing corporate social responsible activities. They're doing the CSIR? Yeah, something like that. They're doing those activities. That manager who's looking to hire you could be involved in initiatives outside of work that are aligned to some of the things that you do. And as I said earlier on, we have a place on LinkedIn where we can put specific things that we have done that attest to our credibility, that attest to our exceptionalness, because you are a unique brand, you are a unique story. So what awards, what honors, what accomplishments, what papers have you written? What languages do you speak? That will give you the competitive edge. And more importantly here, on LinkedIn, like I said, we want to be intentional about everything we do. So the companies we follow on LinkedIn, sorry, it's Friday the 13th, time for another water break. Hold on a sec. The companies we follow, the organizations, the influencers we follow, the professional influencers on this platform are carefully curated. Because they're industry captains, they're thought leaders. They have been there, done that, and now they got that t-shirt. So when we follow these people, it tells recruiters a story. It tells hiring managers a story. It tells people who want to buy your services a story. It tells me you are investing in understanding that craft, in understanding that industry, in understanding what is new and great in that sector. Jeff Bezos of Amazon, like I said, has said it many times. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So as they're considering which candidates to hire, as they're considering which organizations they should partner up with to buy services from, what is your brand saying about you when you're not in that room? So let's carefully curate what we put on our LinkedIn profile, because all of it matters. What also matters when we're job seeking is that we identify the 5 or more critical skills that we hold. And here's what's going to happen. The people we're connected with on LinkedIn, they're going to go and endorse us for those skills. When they endorse us for those skills, it tells the world of recruiters, hiring managers, potential people who can hire us, buy our products, etc., that we have been attested to have been seen exhibiting these skills. That's what the endorsements mean. And these endorsements only come from people you're connected to. So let's be intentional about the people that we seek to connect with. The other thing is, of course, your recommendations. Recommendations is when people write a smaller testament about you, or when you write a small paragraph about someone. And LinkedIn is a platform where we celebrate each other as professionals. It is a place where we are authentic. So when I write a recommendation for you, I'm not expecting you to write one for me, because otherwise it looks like we're trading recommendations. So let's be sincere. Who has helped you grow to where you are today? That professor, that lecturer, that career services professional, that uncle who's already in the industry, that remote mentor, coach. What can we say about them that they have done to help grow our skills? Why are we doing that? We're doing this because, again, like I said, it's about the feeling. We're showing the world that as much as we're putting ourselves out there as a brand, and we're saying what people, we're seeing what people are saying about us in terms of our endorsements and our skills and our recommendations, but we are generous enough to give and to recognize others. Because when we come into the world of work, that same attitude, that same philosophy, that same culture of collaboration, of mentoring, of coaching, and celebrating others will show itself in the workplace. People want to hire people they can work with. People want to hire people they can get along with. So let us be authentic about celebrating those people who have helped us And then let us seek endorsements and, of course, recommendations from those who have helped us. And for recommendations, when you're reaching out to that VC and you're asking him for the recommendation, maybe jog his memory. Dear sir, dear ma'am, I'm reaching out to you because I worked on this particular project and initiative. You personally were part of it, and we managed to save this, achieve this, improve this. I'm asking you to write a recommendation for me on LinkedIn. Below, I've given some suggested words. Feel free to edit as you deem appropriate. Now, for that executive, you have helped them. You've jogged their memory on who you are, what project you worked on, and what you want to be recommended for. Next, which is probably the part where most students struggle, is of course writing your profile summary. Now, this is a simple one. This is a living digital billboard of the story of you as a young professional. So introduce yourself to the world, who you are, what you do, why it matters, and why people should want to connect up with you. Maybe even tell them what you're exploring, the things you're learning, the things you're investing in, the types of careers you aspire for. Use the language that the business is using. So for example, look at job descriptions for the jobs you want to be in and say, what language have they used and how can I bring that into my profile? Look at the profile of other professionals out there and say, how have they positioned themselves and what about it is authentic that I can borrow and use in my narrative. It's not a long story. It's not a thesis. It's not your life story and autobiography, but it's telling the world what matters today. This is me. This is who I am. This is what skills I have and make me unique. This is the value I look to bring to the world. I continue my conversations on LinkedIn by sharing this type of content. Have a look at my articles. Have a look at maybe my Twitter. Have a look at other platforms that I'm on where you might be sharing that thought leadership. So maybe you've set up a YouTube channel where you're hosting videos that show the work and the skills that you have, or show you volunteering yourself to the institution, helping young people maybe with mathematics during this time of COVID. You volunteered to the university and the university has recorded that. Tell that story. And you know what? I said it's a living digital billboard of the story of you. It will continue to dynamically change if you continually change the story on your profile. Your career is not a straight line. It will change. The things you're passionate about, the jobs you want to get into will change. And so should this part of your profile. LinkedIn is the most valuable digital real estate that you can own. It's not a static resume, a document that is dead, that has no references, no people speaking about you, showing the skills that you're continuously investing in. It has no visual images that come to life, that speak, that have video and rich text. This is where we get to talent. This is where the people who can hire you, the people who can buy your services, the people who can help you grow are. And we only get access to them by being intentional, of course, about our networks. And when I said intentional about our networks, I already spoke, of course, about our alumni. This is the place where you can start reaching out to people who studied similar things as yourself, seeing what companies they ended up in, what sort of job titles they ended up in, what sort of additional skills they acquired to help them become successful. So right now, WITS has over 142,000 alumni. 142,000 people you can reach out to from your old school tie. Introduce yourself. Don't lead with, hey, I need a job. Research the company. Research the career. Research the role that person is in. Can they get you a job? Are they a hiring manager or not? And when we're intentional about that, then we get value because then those people give us informational interviews, tell us the things that will help us get that job. As I said earlier on, follow the companies that you want to work for so that you can understand their culture, so that you can understand the things and the jobs that they're posting on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, as well as a young student, you can go in and set up alerts. You can search for jobs in the sectors you want to work in, and already as a student, start seeing those jobs. Start seeing what skills are required so that you build up those skills as an individual so that by the time you enter the job market, you're best positioned for it. And on top of that, within the job section on LinkedIn, there is a place where you can try even your interview skills, answering interview questions. We're here to help you become successful. Like I said earlier, they're influencers on LinkedIn. These are captains of industry. Go out and search for those that are within your sector, within the sector that you want to work in, and intentionally follow those so that when you get onto your newsfeed, you're getting content that is aligned to the industry or the opportunities that you want to go after. There's over 2.9 million groups on LinkedIn. There's a group for you, a group of like-minded professionals where you can test your ideas. If you're looking to become an entrepreneur, I look at this as my digital sounding board, where I pose a hypothetical situation and I say, I have a product, a solution that addresses this. Where else has this been done? How will this help solve these problems in the world? And how else can I better, as an individual, sharpen the value that I'm bringing? In terms of continuing your journey on LinkedIn, I'm going to end off my session really quickly by saying that invest in yourself. It's fantastic you with this institution. This is an amazing institution. And you're fortunate to be here because they provide services like we're providing today, which help you as an individual. But I encourage you to become a lifelong learner. Always be learning. Why? Because the world we're living in is continuously evolving. I've put up here what were the most in demand soft skills. They have more or less not changed. Your creativity, your collaborative skills, your communication skills, your time management. Yes, we're doing degrees today, but unless we get these soft skills and we have them on our profile, the recruiters, when they search, they use keywords. These will not show up on our profiles as they stand today. So invest in those soft skills because this is what business is looking for. In terms of hard skills, LinkedIn provides you a place where you can get hard skills. And how do we do this? We do this successfully because we see the jobs that are being posted. The people that are out there trying to hire you post their jobs on LinkedIn. And when we see these jobs on LinkedIn, which are 11 million plus, we then go out to the world's finest content creators and we create content. And this content is the content that is most in demand. And because you're with Wits, we want you to start your journey today. So I'm encouraging you, after this session, of course, to go on to opportunity.linkedin.com, because what you're going to find there are 10 of the most in-demand jobs, 10 of the jobs that provide a livable wage, and the skills that are associated with those jobs, to become a salesman, to become a digital marketer, to become a project manager. Go and have a look at those. Do those, even if you're looking to become an entrepreneur. Do those if you're looking to become an employee or even a leader. Add them to your profile. And as you add them to your profile, share with your network what you've learned and why you've invested in that. Because you're becoming top of mind. By being active on this platform, beyond just having a profile, by sharing content, liking other people's comments, engaging with other people's content, this helps us remain top of mind. I'm encouraging you to rent space in people's minds. You rent space in people's minds by sharing thought leadership. You rent space in people's mind by enabling them, by empowering them, by allowing those people to see what is possible if they had your services, if they brought you on board. You allow those people also to see your self-starter, your go-getter attitude by building up that credibility, constantly sharing on the platform. It's time to shine as a student. The world has changed. It's time to shine as an individual, telling your story, engaging with people that matter, and doing the things that will ultimately pay you for the whole of your working career. Thank you very much for giving me this time. I hope I haven't overrun, and hopefully at some point I'll be able to answer some of the questions.
Thank you very much, Stuart. You are right on time. Actually, you even left a few minutes for questions. So I don't know if there's any questions from anyone. You could please raise your hand, or simply, do you see any questions on the chat box on your side?
No, there are no questions in the chat box. I don't know if someone wants to unmute and then ask a question.
Yes, please do. You can raise your hand and go ahead and ask Stuart any question that you'd like to ask.
Okay,
Looks
seems
like I've been clear.
Yes, I think you covered it quite thoroughly. But I would like to ask one question, and I've been asked this question a few times, and I invited the person to this event as well. Do you include your high school achievements in your LinkedIn profile?
Why not? These are achievements that you've had that tell the story of what kind of a professional you are. So you've been team captain, you've led the debate club, you won a tournament. All of these begin to tell the story of the person who you are. If I understand you holistically, I'm more likely to be intrigued and want to interview you. So, yes, it's never too early to start building up that professional credibility. And as you mature, you re-look at some of those credibility and you say, well, I'm at a stage where this kind of detail doesn't matter, or it does, and then you add it in or remove it accordingly.
Mm. Thank you very much for that point. I believe no one has a question. And if you do, please, you can still ask the question that you have. Remember, this session is still being recorded. You'll receive the link to the session as well. Now let's move on to our next part. What recruiters look out for with Maxi Williams. Now, Maxi studied her honors in marketing management at Mancosa. For those of you who don't know, that is the Management College of Southern Africa. She also went and studied her business administration at UCT, Graduate School of Business. She has been with Alan Gray for over 10 years, where she discovered her passion to develop and guide young people like you and me. She is in the talent acquisition. She's a talent acquisition specialist via social media, specifically trying to help people through LinkedIn, guiding young talent to achieve their goals. Well, as I said earlier, if you want to work for Allen Gray or any other such company, please pay attention as Maxi Williams tells us what recruiters look out for in your profile.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction. I feel so flattered. Thank you for having us. I think it's always a pleasure to engage with Wits and just having these meaningful conversations and being able to help where we can and guide where we can. So yeah, as you have mentioned, I'm Maxi. I'm part of the recruitment team, and I specifically look at recruiting via LinkedIn. So I will cover a little bit of what Stewart already has said. So I won't go into too much detail on that. And Samantha will talk about brand a little bit. So I will touch on a bit of both, but more from a recruiter perspective. So as Stewart said, your LinkedIn profile is really just not a profile. It's really the start of your professional brand. And how you position yourself is really super, super important. And so Samantha will go into that a little bit later on. But I want to talk to you guys a little bit about thinking about what does it mean to have a brand. Like if you look at a company perspective, right? A company has different ways of positioning themselves. So they have a corporate brand. So this is the brand that they want to leave their customers with. So when selling a product, when positioning themselves in the mind of the consumer, right? But then there's also the employer brand. So what does the company want to stand for in the mind of current employees as well as potential employees. So you will see that as Stewart mentioned, things are starting to evolve. So it's no longer about, everybody is clamoring towards one company, but actually there is a talent war at play. So you will see companies are starting to invest more and more into their employer brand, because attracting the right talent to the company actually puts the company in a much better competitive space, and building their corporate brand as well. So there's a lot to be said about brand and so on, and strengthening a brand. And like I said, I'm not going to go into the personal brand, but from an employer's perspective, there has to be alignment as well. So I want you to think about, as an employer brand, right? When you think of an employer, you think about, okay, I want to work for a company where, there's a great culture. Their values are, aligned with mine. The benefits will speak for what I am willing to invest in that company. So my skills that I bring, the time that I'm going to invest in the company, it should align. So what is the company going to give me for what I have to offer? But now I want to reverse that question and ask, what do you have to offer for the company that you are applying for? And that is exactly what Stewart has been talking about. If you have something to offer, you need to advertise. You need to advertise, this is what I have to offer. So one of the questions that came through on the Google Forms where you guys RSVP'd was, do I really have to have a LinkedIn profile? You don't really have to. But that is the way the world is going. I mean, you guys saw the stats that Stewart showed. And yes, there's always the option of going to a company website and applying on a portal where you are really just a name on the company's portal. Nobody's seeing a profile picture or anything. So yes, if you want to stand out and if you have a story to tell, then this is definitely the right platform. I've done a little bit of research myself, and so you have your Facebook profile where you can, some recruiters are actually on Facebook, but a lot of companies focus on LinkedIn, or mostly on LinkedIn, purely because of the type of people they want to attract. So they can see like who are the professional people, who has the acquired skills. You don't necessarily want to go through people's party photos, for example. So yeah, it is the best professional platform at the moment, and we are investing our time and efforts to find those talents that we need. Okay, so from my side, I know you guys have asked what from a recruiter perspective are you looking for? And those are actually all the things that Stewart has mentioned. Okay, so how I go about finding these profiles. So like I said, we use something that's called a recruiter license. I will then go in and I will use certain filters, right? So I will, for example, say, okay, I'm looking for somebody that has graduated between, say, 2019 and 2021. I'm also looking for someone that has a BCom degree or a business science degree, or studying towards completing that degree. I'm looking for someone from these top universities, and they should have these 3 top skills that I'm looking for, right? Then I'm also looking for somebody who's potentially willing to relocate. So if I say, okay, I'm going to list the locations that I'm looking for, I might say, okay, give me everyone from Gauteng, everyone from the Western Cape, everyone from KZN, that fit these few filters that I have included. But they need to be able to or willing to relocate because the role is, for example, in Cape Town, or it is in Joburg. So if you are from the Free State, or you are from KZN, you have to be willing to relocate. Okay, so with that, I want to leave you with maybe a thought. if you do create a LinkedIn profile, as Stewart has said, everything changes, it evolves over time. So you have to really invest the time to go and update your profile so that if you add something or if something changes in your world, that you are still visible with whatever has changed. So say, for example, we're looking for someone with say some script writing skills, right? And you didn't have that as a profile or as part of your profile, but somewhere along the line you picked up that skill. It's important then that you go and you update your profile. If you haven't been in the job market and your profile, for example, shows not open to work, and I'm only looking for people that are open to work, your profile is not going to come up in my search. Okay. Similarly, if I say only show me, so Stewart mentioned, follow those companies. If I put in my filter, only give me people who are company followers, because then I know that this person has an interest in the company, then, potentially your profile is also not going to come up if you are not a company follower. But those are some of the filters that we can use. So I think that the message that I want to leave with that is constantly update your profile. It is important, for you to just become available firstly in searches. As I said, LinkedIn is currently probably the biggest channel at the moment for recruitment. There are other channels, obviously. So these like, you have the university portals, companies have their websites, but this is definitely the platform where you can engage and, build a position yourself. It's an opportunity for you to advertise yourself as well. Okay, so with that being said, the second part, then what I do from a recruiter's perspective, now that I have my list of profiles that came up, so I have my top universities, I have my qualifications that I want, I have people that are open to relocate or open to jobs or whatever the case might be. Now it brings up 50 profiles. Guess what? Now it is your opportunity to shine as an individual, because I'm going to go through the individual profiles that catch my eye. I'm not going to go through each and every profile. I'm going to go through the ones that actually stands out. And the same with advertisements. What you put out there is what is going to attract the eye, right? So you want to make sure that, as Stewart said, put something appealing, your profile picture, that is super important. From my perspective, if I don't see a profile picture, I tend to scroll past unless there's really something interesting that catches my eye. Okay. Yeah, so the biggest takeout from that, keep your profile updated. Make sure you put the information on there. If you are studying towards your degree, if you've completed your degree, make sure you update the information on regularly. And those skills and endorsements that Stewart talked about, super important, because that is what's going to set you apart from the rest of the pack. Okay, so like I said, easily I would get 50 to 200 people on any given day on a filter. And why must I look at a specific profile as opposed to the profile that's after that? All right, so if it doesn't contain the relevant information, then it does become like a bit pointless to have a profile in the first place, because then what are you actually advertising? So Stewart, also, I actually noted here, a quick tip from me would be to become a company follower. And Stewart also noted that. I think it's super important for you to engage, because the platform is about engagement. It's not just about, okay, yeah, I am, reach out to me. It's about mutual engagement, and you will see that that is the way that companies are going now as well. It's not just about advertising a vacancy and praying that someone, the right person will get along. But there's a lot of engagement happening now to find that values fit, to find that culture fit, to find that person that, will commit to the company and that the company can invest in. So there's a lot of engagement happening. So you will see, for example, content, the type of content that companies post now. It's all about, it's not necessarily just tied to a vacancy, but it is really also to strengthen the company's employer brand in the mind of that person looking for a job. Okay. And I know Sam will go into the brand, but just lastly, be careful what you post. So as Stewart mentioned, having activity on LinkedIn is super important. It creates that, it builds an awareness about you and about who you are, the types of conversations that you have. You remain current, but also be careful of the types of content that you post. Another question that I came across was, do people or do recruiters actually go through your profile and check, what you liked, what you shared, and so on? We don't always have the time to do that, but if you are a connection, you I will, for example, get an alert to say Samantha has shared a post, or she has liked a post, or she commented on someone's post, right? So I will, for example, go and I will say, okay, nice uplifting post for Women's Month. But, so stay away from getting involved in things that might, tarnish your own brand, or just not create a nice perspective of you as an employer, as an employee. And think about, how do you, if you had to go for an interview, with all of these, like all of the evidence of what you have posted on your social media, would you want your employer to know this about you? So just be careful of how you position yourself. Then I just want to, something that Stewart touched on as well. Something I want to leave with you, and I think it's a question that I often get asked on LinkedIn. What do I need to do to stand out? I think we touched on that a little bit. But I think what you guys need to remember as young professionals entering the working environment now is that the tables are turning. All right, you have the negotiating power is actually shifting in your favor now. There's a talent war going on. Companies, even now with the high unemployment rate, companies are struggling to find the skills that they are looking for to fill certain positions. Okay, so you actually have that negotiating power. I don't want you guys to feel, but okay, I'm just like one person in like 700 million, users of LinkedIn. You actually have the negotiating power when it comes to positioning yourself with that skills, but you have to put in the work to create your professional brand on LinkedIn and actually make it worthwhile for that company to reach out to you. You might have everything that it takes, but if you don't put that out there for us to see, we are not going to see you. So yeah, please do invest some time to really think about, okay, how do I put this? How do I position this so that I stand out? How do I become the person that 5 top companies fight over? So yeah, that is really what you want. So when you think of building your profile, don't just think of, okay, I'll just put like any picture, or I'll just list like 5 random things, and then when I come to interview stage, I can't back it up. Really think about, how do I become the person that companies fight over? So yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there. Are there any questions at this point before I hand over to Samantha?
Please, if you have any question, you can please raise your hand and unmute yourself. Tsepiso Bapela, please, can we hear your question?
Yes, thank you for that presentation. I was wondering, you mentioned that activity on your LinkedIn profile is important, and from your standpoint, what would you think like a reasonable amount of activity would it be? Should we approach it like our socials where we post on a daily basis, or a little bit more spaced out, like on a weekly basis and such? Thank you.
Mhm. From my perspective, I think you should also keep relevance in mind. So you don't just want to post something for the sake of, right? So you want to post or engage in content that is meaningful. So if you are just going to like and share and post everything just for the sake of having activity on LinkedIn on a daily basis, people might say, "Oh, it's Tsepiso again." You know, maybe something to say with no meaning or no substance. So I would recommend that when you find content and when you have something to say that's meaningful and impactful, then use that. So I would say maybe once a week. For me, that's like more than enough because it stays current, and especially if what you have shared, you know, or what your story is meaningful. But if I see you online every day sharing something like, I just had the best sandwich ever, and tomorrow it's I just had the best coffee ever, then I'm gonna like, okay, so you know, so don't just share for the sake of sharing. If there's something meaningful, so you can see on my profile as well, I do share interview tips. Samantha also shares great insight in terms of our, you know, personal experiences when it comes to recruiting, because we do want to really help people. But I'm not necessarily going to commit to say, okay, I'm going to share something every second day just for the sake of sharing and building, you know, a network. When I do have something meaningful to say that, you know, people are reaching out to me and asking me to share certain things, I will then go on and say, okay, 5 people have identified this. I will go and share that.
Mm. Thank you very
Stuart,
much, Nixie.
Stuart looks like he wants to add on to that answer.
No, brilliant answer. But I was just going to add to it in that when you are sharing, probably the most powerful area to share in is writing an article, a short article. So LinkedIn gives you two opportunities to share. You can share videos, content about what's happening right now. These are the things we see in our feed. But you can also write a short form article on LinkedIn. And this is probably the best for you as a young professional because this will reach a much wider audience than when you just share regular updates that go to your network. And again, the beauty about this is that when you write that short form article, you're crystallizing some of the ideas that will get you hired. When you write this short form article, it stays with your profile forever. The difference with updates is that when we post updates, this is what's happening. I'm on a LinkedIn session. I learned this. When people stop interacting with it, it's going to disappear. But when you write an article, it means when you're in an interview and someone says, by the way, tell us more about this area of your studies or this area that you say you have skills in. It's great to say, you know what? Have a look at my LinkedIn profile. I've actually just written an article, and this is what this person said. This is what I learned by writing this article, and this is the value it's brought to me. So write articles that tell the story of the type of work you're looking to do, the type of impact you're looking to provide. And guess what? Even if you're looking to become an entrepreneur, that story, that article could be about your business. That story, that article could be about how you as a family have struggled to raise the fees for you to go through your education. When we write these stories and put in a professional context to the stories, it helps educate the people who are going to hire us. That's all I had to say.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I think Tsepiso now has a clear idea of that. Sioli said Judah, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, I would like to know what are the main skills that you guys look out for?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
The main skills.
So, the main skill?
Main skills. So it depends. So currently, we recruit specifically for graduate positions. So we would, and Samantha will go a bit deeper into this, but for example, we would look at certain skills that you will pick up during your time at varsity. So what kind of impact have you made through being part of, a society? What kind of skills have you picked up? So we're not necessarily looking for professional skills that you are going to, by managing people, for example, right, that you're only going to pick up in the workplace, but we are looking at things like leadership, right? Your communication skills, because those are skills that you can refine from your first year up until your final year. But also, how did you refine those skills? By getting involved in, certain initiatives, attending certain talks, and then take it further from there. You have those discussions and engagement. You also do a bit of self-reflection to see, okay, this is an area where I'm lacking. And a lot of times communication skills is when we ask candidates, for example, what do you think is your development area? Communication skills often, is mentioned as the top one. So yes, communication skills, I would say is right up there. And like proven resilience, bouncing back from failures and so on. So those are competencies, but I think you can display those in your story that you tell, and how you position your profile as well. So I think in terms of what you want to display on your profile, you need to align it with whatever the job or the vacancy is that you are going for, or the industry. So for example, if I am recruiting for a client services role and that is what you are interested in, I'm definitely going to look at communication skills, right? But someone who is recruiting for an IT role, they might not require communication skills that much, but they might require more hard and technical skills. So it really is dependent on what it is that you feel that you need to align your profile to. Okay.
Thank you very much, Maxi. I hope your question was answered, Lisa. I don't see any more questions, but I'd like Maxi, please enlighten us on the skills which you mentioned that now as Allen Gray or any company are looking for, because I believe they are those top tier, and I think Stewart mentioned the link which we can go to. Could you please give us a brief description about that?
Yeah, so like I said, it depends really on the role that, remember, Allen Gray is a big company, and there will be various roles that are advertised, and the different roles might require different skills, right? So for example, client services, but then you have, for example, business analyst roles that require more technical skills. There will be roles like, for example, on the operational side, where you require those analytical skills. So you need to have proven analytical skills where you've identified, for example, errors, and working with data, that kind of thing. So I would say it really depends on the skills that are needed for the role is very much role specific. It's not really company specific, because a company can have various roles that they are recruiting for, which is the case with Allen Gray as well. But it really, you need to understand, for example, the job spec and how you align with those skills. I don't know if that kind of makes sense. So it's not really the companies. The company might look for certain values, or whether you align with the company values, but in terms of certain skills, that will depend on whether whatever the role is that the company is recruiting for at the moment.
Okay, thank you very
Okay.
much, Maxi. I think we'll be taking the last question. I see Binashe Maningining. Please.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask my question. We've spoken about the skills and the kind of things that companies look for when they're looking for a potential employee. My question is, as an international student in South Africa, most of the time I find myself applying for jobs only to then realize that the jobs are not necessarily open to foreign nationals. Is there a way to try to filter, or maybe I don't know, just filter your search in such a way that you are not going on a goose chase applying for jobs that don't actually consider foreign nationals when applying for a job or looking at job posts on LinkedIn?
I'm not sure if Stewart can cover that. I'm not sure whether you are asking that from someone who is looking, like how to structure your profile, or whether you are looking for an answer from a recruiter perspective in terms of, are we actually looking at foreign nationals? So maybe if you can clarify that part, then we can maybe answer your question.
Both.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to answer from a recruiter perspective. So, and this is just me personally. I can't speak for everyone, obviously. There might be, recruiters that do things differently. When I do my filters, I actually do not exclude anyone. I will just say, like, people from these provinces, for example, right? And I've had many engagements with foreign nationals. If they have permanent residency or whatever the case might be, then we do proceed with the application. But we have to be in line with whatever the legislation is, and so we won't, for example, if you don't have the relevant papers, we cannot proceed with an application. But that is a conversation that we have, on a case-by-case basis, because your situation might just be different. But from a recruiter perspective, no, we don't necessarily have a filter that says only people born in South Africa. We engage with everyone that come up in our filters, if you obviously meet the requirements that we are looking for. I don't know if Stewart can maybe give you a tip on, from a profile perspective.
Yeah, from a profile perspective, and it was a good question. From a profile perspective, you have the opportunity as an individual, first of all, to say you're openly looking for work, but you have the opportunity to define what kind of work you're looking for: full-time, part-time, contractual, volunteer, internship, etc. You also have the opportunity to say which locations you're looking to work in. And these would obviously be locations where you have the legal right to apply for work. So take the time to go in and own your own career space. And here's the beauty: you can even write a note that recruiters can see in terms of, this is where I am in my career and this is the aspiration that I have. They can find those notes in your section once you've gone in and populated that information. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that the world of work has changed. So sometimes when we think about saying, I only want to look for jobs in countries where I can work, or in my region or in my country, you're actually limiting yourself, because the world of work has moved to remote work. Companies, like Maxi said, are looking for critical skills. Where you sit doesn't actually matter, right? So make sure that as you project and as you put out what kind of jobs you're looking for, locations you're thinking about working in, specify that you're open to remote work, because the opportunity and the world and the future of work is not all within your neighborhood. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart and Maxi. Andile, I see your question. I would like to proceed with the next one, and please hold your question, write it down, note it, please. Would like to hear a question at the end of the session. But now we want to introduce Sam. She'll be talking about personal branding. Now, this is one of the most important things which we should know when it comes to us as being university students. Sam is also in Ellen Gray. She studied her Bachelor of Sciences in Organizational Psychology and Industrial Sociology She also did her Bachelor of Commerce in Industrial and Organizational Psychology with UNISA. She is an experienced talent acquisition specialist with the Retail Client Services Department at Allen Gray. She wants to find people who are creative, people who have a passion, people who strive to achieve their potential. She wants to walk that journey with them. Therefore, she's looking for graduates and young professionals, such as me and you in the future, if we are still in our second, third year. We really need to listen to how we can really brand ourselves personally. Sam Raaff, we give you the stage. Please, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Sammy. Can everybody hear me? Can you guys?
Yes.
My internet is a bit shoddy. I'm in my daughter's room, and the internet's a bit low over here. Also, I'm not as cool as Maxi and Stewart without like a book full of notes. So I've written myself down some notes just so that I can wrap up my thoughts because I tend to chat quite a bit. Okay, cool. So thank you very much for staying on for so long. I know it's a Friday evening, and I know everybody wants to go party, obviously in your own house because it's lockdown. So just hear me out, and I think this is a really great opportunity to engage in these types of conversations. And once the session is done, don't stop engaging. Reach out to myself, reach out to Maxi, and all the people online, and start the conversation. And I think that's very important. Is that you have to take on these platforms to connect, to grow your network, and essentially grow your understanding and the information. Because in the CSC, the Retail Client Services, we call it a knowledge hub, but it doesn't just stop there. It stops, where you want it to. So get out there, expose yourself. But I think these are really great platforms to engage. I'm going to try and have a more interactive session, so I might ask for some videos on just to see your faces and get some insight to who you are. And I think from an outcomes perspective, and what I really want to achieve from this branding side of things is for you to be able to identify some elements and tools of your own success. I think that we all have the potential, but how do we utilize our potential in the real world? And that's extremely important. It's almost like having some seeds, of a plant, but not knowing how to garden. I mean, like Checkers came up with that little garden. McDonald's has that little pods, but like, how many of you just like keep it on the side? Because I don't know what to do with it. And that's the same with your potential, is that you need to know how to harness it, need to know how to reach and maximize your potential. Okay, so what I want to do is really to get you to understand what brand positioning is. And like I said, it's the start of a conversation. It's not everything about brand positioning, but it's the start of a conversation. And with these tools and sort of elements, I want you to empower yourselves to really evolve as individuals, and to create magic from your potential, right? And you all have that potential. So let's see if we can reach for the stars and utilize some of these skill set, not only that I've said, but Stewart and as well as Maxi have given it some incredible tips, along the way. So, not everything might pertain to you, but the things that are relevant, take it, absorb it, and try something different. Whether it's this weekend, whether it's next week, whether it's like thinking about that article that Stewart spoke about, try something different and, work on yourself. Cool. So you might hear me flipping pages because I have a lot of pages to go through. Cool. So before I get into my presentation, which is a bit more interactive, I just want to touch on, the brand side of thing, which is, brand is it's such a broad topic. And it's really just, when you think about brand, it really is the things that you can see of people and the things that you can't see. And it's like that little analogy, the picture of the iceberg, where you have just the tip of the iceberg above the water, but really what creates the tip is that wealth of and the body of the iceberg, which is underwater, which is not something that we can see. So we really need to be aware of the fact that brand is something that you can see, something that you can't see, something that you are conscious of, and a lot of it is subliminal. A lot of it is subconscious. And I'm going to speak about some of those elements in a bit. And when you think of this, it's like a fingerprint as well, right? Like we all have fingerprints. Great. You know, we all have fingers. Well, most of us have fingers and we all have fingerprints. So like what creates that unique identity of who we are? And sometimes you're going to find, yes, of course, there are similarities between yourself and your peers or your community, whatever the case may be. But there are going to be differences within those similarities, and you need to absolutely own that. And that's your brand, right? And your brand doesn't stop at like when you were a child and, you know, this is the way that you were treated as a child. Okay, so this is my viewpoint of life. Your brand continuously grows, it continuously evolves, and you need to own that process. But you also need to take responsibility to steer the process of growing your brand. And you know, maybe let's put our mics on for a bit. Like when you think of brand, I mean, what comes to mind? Maybe like one or two people, like what comes to mind when you immediately when you think of brand? Anybody want to answer? You can just unmute yourself and go for it. Like a one sentence answer. Anybody brave enough? Sorry, can you repeat that?
Social capital.
Social capital. Absolutely. Anybody else? Okay, I'll jump in for you. So when you think about brand, I think, you know, a lot of us, you know, focus on the physical elements, right? But when I spoke about that iceberg, I spoke about, you know, that body underneath that informs the peak that we see, and some of a lot of our subconscious elements of brand and how we perpetuate that brand to the universe, to our peer groups, to our community, is largely based on things. And I think Stewart and Maxi touched on it, is values. You know, your things like your values, the way that you were brought up. And I always give this example in interviews, you know, where you can be in the same neighborhood as somebody, your best friend can live next to you live in the same community, you go to the same school, you've done everything the same. But mind you, when you go into each other's houses, best believe that your parents treat you completely different. And that those type of things inform the way that we act in the world, you know. And when I say this in interviews, it's more like the investment philosophy. You might have one household that you know, you really focus on how to invest your money, right? So you grew up in an environment where for your tuck shop money every week you got a 10 rand, and your father says to you, listen, Bob and Susie is my imaginary friends. Everybody, look at Maxie laughing at me. So Bob and Susie, you have 10 rand, but I want you to save um 4 rand every time I give you that 10 rand, and put that away. And then, you know, you live in another household and there's Susie, and Susie's parents says, my dear, you go spend the money, you look after yourself, and it's very momentary. It's like instant gratification. And so these type of things is like the way that we were brought up as kids, as children, as individuals, informs the decisions, and informs the way that we perpetuate things in society. So we need to be considerate of those factors, you know, that make us unique, that make us whole. So your experience, your background, your strengths, your, I don't like saying the word weakness, I like saying the word like areas of development. If we acknowledge those elements, it really does inform the brand that we put out there. Okay, cool. So let me share my presentation so you don't have to hear my voice all the time. Well, I'll speak over some of the pictures. Give me 1 second. Can you guys see this? Anybody?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great stuff. So this slide is about brands, you know, and here's a nice definition of brand. A brand is an identifying symbol, mark, logo, name, or sentence to distinguish from others. A combination of one or more of these elements can be utilized to create a brand identity. Now, this is where I need you to jump in, right? So here are some brands. They are some local and some brands that we can identify with. But maybe I can get somebody, you know, that's on this session to tell me, like, what do you think of these brands when you see these logos? What is it? What are like the first thoughts that come to mind where you see things like Coca-Cola, Audi, Louis Vuitton, Google, Woolworths, Iscom? Like, what are some of the things that pops into mind? Don't worry to put up your hand. You can just, you know, unmute yourself and just go for it.
So I
Anybody?
think of things. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So when I see these brands, I just think of like something that is distinguished and just like the top of their field or whatever they're producing.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to have a go?
I think sorry,
Hello.
I don't know, generally when I look at the brands, I see maybe luxury also.
Okay, I heard somebody else behind the voice as well.
Hi, it's me. Okay, I will just give a quick analogy of all of them, maybe. Coca-Cola,
Yes,
one
thanks.
thinks normally about fizzy drinks. Sometimes there's some companies that they have subsidiaries of that have still water, and Louis Vuitton, it's more expensive clothes that cater for the very rich. Um, Audi is one of those opulent cars that everyone aspires to have. When I think ESCOM, I think load shedding. When I think Woolworths, I think nice food, quality as well, and Google is something that I use every day.
Okay, spot on. And as we can hear from these various, thoughts about these brands, is that we associate various, I think, feelings and thoughts about these brands, whether they're positive, whether they're negative, whether they are a bit more neutral, right? When I think of Coca-Cola, I think, their slogans like "Taste the Feeling." And it's a complete experience. Like if you have Coke, I mean, I'm not going to put a Jive down, but if you have Jive and if you have Coke, it's a very different experience. Like I think of Coke, McDonald's, World Cup, sharing a drink with friends. I'm not somebody that drinks alcohol. So for me, sharing a Coke with somebody is just as, great as, sharing a drink, that other people would have at a party or whatever the case may be. Um, and we look at like things like Audi is, their slogan actually translates to, being ahead of technology. And I mean, I have a husband that loves cars. And so when he sees a new Audi, he doesn't only think about, the experience of driving an Audi. It's about, what new specs are out there with Audi, like what new technology have they implemented into their cars, the models, and things like that. And somebody said, Woolworths looking at quality, and that's what it is. Their slogan is discover the difference. And there's such a unique difference when it comes to Woolies food, Woolies produce, and things like that. I mean, for myself, I have 2 kids, and so I have to buy snacks for the week. And I always say, like, I'll go to Woolies and buy some bananas for the week because I know that, by Friday, I'm not going to have bananas that are bruised. And so for me, it makes sense, spending a bit more money for things like fresh produce at Woolworths because I know the quality is going to be really great. And somebody mentioned, ESCOM is, associated with load shedding. And that's right. At this point, ESCOM is associated with load shedding and power cuts and things like that. And it's quite ironic because their slogan for ESCOM is powering your world, but a lot of the times we are almost disempowered without any electricity, and things like that, right? So here we have some brands that, from a logo perspective, when we see it creates a certain emotion, it creates a certain way that we feel, the way that we think. Somebody said Louis Vuitton is expensive things, and that's the brand that it's accumulated over the years. But what about if we put brand into a people's perspective, right? What sort of associations do we have when it comes to people? Is it negative? Is it positive? Is it neutral? Do we align to these brands and things like that? So let me go over to some people. Okay, so perception is key to your success. Perception of your brand is very important. And so we have some people that you may know, you might not know. That's me. And there's a guy. So anybody want to give a go at like what do you think about these people's brand? What do you think about when you see Sia Khaleesi, the beautiful lady next to Sia, myself, and the guy who looks like he's shouting? What sort of emotions come up? Like, what do you think about their brand? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it neutral? Do you want to distance yourself from them? Do you see yourself aspiring to be them? Give me some thoughts. Anybody?
Okay, I'll go again.
Thank you.
Okay, Siakolisi looks like the sporty kind, very adventurous, kind of rough kind of guy. But the sport that he's associated with also kind of, you know, requires someone who's going to do things of that nature. And then the lady next to her, next to him, says corporate, maybe data analyst, maybe manager, maybe CEO, along those lines. And then um,
Be kind to the next one. That's me.
yours is kind of biased, but the posture is very powerful. It says somebody who is in power, but exercises the power with a lot of gentleness. Um, yeah, I don't know what more to say, but it's like your laissez-faire kind of leadership style. Person who looks approachable. Yeah, kind of a good leader perspective point of view. And then the one in the last picture, it looks like the tyrant manager that everybody literally tries to avoid at work.
Mm. Okay, well, thank you very much for giving us some insight to what you think, and I think you're spot on in terms of what these people represent. But I think in terms of brand and the perception of your brand is very important to the world out there. And I don't only think it's from like a family perspective or your peer group. It really is like what you are perpetuating to society. And Stewart and Maxi spoke a little bit about this in your profile, in the way that you approach companies and things like that. But your brand itself, how you carry yourself, is very important. So if you see somebody like Sia Khaleesi, courageous, brave, leadership comes to mind, strength comes to mind, leading a pack. So there has to be some sort of a compassion and empathy that he has to exude in order to lead a team. Something like decision making should be really important in terms of strategizing, like how are we as the Springboks going to win. I don't know if they have leagues. I don't know anything about rugby. But like, how are we going to win the tournament, for example? And the lady next to him is like, she has this bold confidence. She's an empowered female. But what I love about her is like, you can see she's dressed for business. But her hair saying, I'm still fun, I'm still unique, I'm embracing my like natural hair. And I love that. I don't know if anybody can see, but she's got like a blue shade of eyeshadow on, which is quite funky for a businesswoman, because you don't normally see color when it comes to like, the typical businesswoman, that's portrayed in shows and series and things like that. So she's got a bit of an edge, and I quite like that about her. She's quite zesty. And then, okay, that's me. We don't have to speak about that. But that guy on the end, like he's dressed appropriately. He's dressed business smart. But the perception that people have of him in that picture is that, like you said, it's a tyrant manager. It's somebody that I don't align to, because they seem quite hot-headed. They seem like they just make decisions on a whim. I can't really trust them. And something that Stewart said earlier is building your credibility. And how does one build credibility as a leader in any space if the first thing that you are going to do is be irrational and shout at people and things like that? So these are just like, from a people's perspective, like visually, how do we align to brands? What are the emotions that are brought up from these personal brands that we are seeing today? Okay. I got a slide, but I'm going to take myself off the slide, because otherwise you're just going to see the slide the whole time. And I'm going to go through some elements of brand, and hopefully I will do this over about 15 minutes. Okay, so let me just exit from the shared screen. Okay, and if you hear somebody trying to get into the room, I've locked myself in my daughter's room, and my son is trying to get in. And so I apologize about about that. Cool. So if we look at personal brand, I think the first thing that comes to mind, and something that Stewart, and I'll reiterate what Stewart and Maxi has said, is what message are you trying to communicate? And as a brand, and like we spoke about some of those people, is that the message that you're trying to communicate is like you're a walking, talking, living, breathing brand, and everything that you do is encompassed in the brand that you're trying to portray, right? Whether it is something that's intentional, like the way that you greet somebody with a firm handshake, are you doing that intentionally? Or is it, when somebody's speaking, you're rolling your eyes quite often? So, what message are you trying to communicate? It can be like I said, something very intentional, and something that might not be intentional, but it's still like how people perceive you. Um, and I think from a recruitment perspective, what we look at is more than what is on your CV and what is in your resume, and that's something that Maxi also touched on. Is that how you portray yourself in an interview setting, how you portray yourself to those interviewers. Your online presence is such an important role in terms of how people perceive you, that credibility that you're building up. And like Stewart mentioned something about renting space in people's mind, you have to be intentional about what you're trying to communicate, right? So it can be from things like how you carry yourself, what do you think of yourself, that confidence, that swagger, that demeanor. And I always feel a bit jealous sometimes when I go to a networking event and there's somebody that you can see they're just buzzing around the room, but it's because they have confidence in themselves to go up to people and say, hi, my name is Bob, my name is Susie, and this is my purpose. Like, I want to chat to you, I've been looking at you, and they come with that intention and that purpose-driven mindset. But we also have to be conscious about that subconscious level of brand, and what we are trying to communicate. It has to be an active thought in whatever you are doing. And I'm sure you've experienced a lot about this, when you in like you study groups, or when you go to a party, or you go into family events, and some people might just look awkward, but once you chat to them, they're actually quite confident, they're speaking quite sharply, and you really understand what message they're trying to get across. Um, and you'll see that in different spaces, we might change who we are. And I'm sure you've experienced this in your own world, when you're sitting with your friends, maybe you're watching the rugby and you're with, some of your guy friends, your girlfriends, you're having a good time, there's some snacks, there's some drinks. And so the person you are there might be very more like very relaxed. But if you're in maybe a more family or traditional setting, you might change your demeanor slightly in order to be appropriate for that particular situation. But I think what's intrinsic, back to that analogy of the iceberg, is that your values don't change. The way that you approach people, the way that you treat your elderly, your cultural experience, your brand does not change from an intrinsic level. And that's something that's going to be constant across areas, and that's intrinsic to your brand, and we need to acknowledge that piece of things, right? And I think from a workplace perspective, when we're doing interviews and things like that, you can say on your CV, I am a hardworking individual, I'm quite organized. But what we need to actually acknowledge is that when we are probed on these things, because that happens, we probe on, so, I see in your CV that you said you're quite a hardworking and organized individual, but, from an academic traction point of view, you've gotten multiple fails. So tell me about, how are you hardworking? And that authenticity has to come through consistently in order for your brand to be taken seriously, for that credibility of your brand to be driven in everything that you do. Okay. Um, so the next point I want to go to is knowing your worth. Does anybody have questions on the communication side of things? Any questions, or should I go on? Okay, let me go on. Cool. So the next point is about knowing your worth. And I think this is something that Maxi touched on and Stewart, I think, is that the bargaining power is in your hands. The negotiating side of things is in your hands. And I think we need to reclaim this and own this back again, because knowing your worth is knowing whether a company, whether an organization, whether an influencer aligns to your personal brand. And sometimes we get confused, like sometimes we feel like we coerced into aligning to a particular brand, but actually it doesn't make sense for us. Has anybody felt that? You can just give me a yes or a no. Have you ever felt that, where maybe you've gone to a party and everybody is drinking and you feel like, shucks, I don't actually drink. Now, do I drink? Do I succumb to peer pressure? Have you ever felt that? Anybody? Or you like wizards and you've never felt this before? Okay, so I'm assuming you have felt this in some way, shape, or form where you feel like you're not being authentic with yourself and you somewhat lower your standards to meet the criteria of the people around you. And when it comes to things like your organization that you align to or the organization that you're applying to, you have to actively work on understanding whether you align to the company. And so this is where the research comes in with LinkedIn. Stewart mentioned, following those influencers, following those companies, getting to know the culture, getting to know the people, and getting to know the organizations that you feel that you align to. And there might be a time that you are in an interview or interaction with management and you feel like, actually, this is not a company that I want to. The staff works late, the pay is low, and actually I don't see any progression. And you can, respectfully say, actually, I don't feel that this is, for me. But that is, based on your understanding of what your worth is, right? And we have to actively, like I said, spoke about active thought, you have to actively align to this. So yeah, I think, if anything that you go away with, I encourage you to understand what your worth is and how you align to various companies, various leadership styles. And that's something that we ask as recruiters in these interview interactions. What type of leadership style do you thrive, under? And if you're looking at, saying like, I want a really great leader, what does that mean to you? What type of leadership are you going to thrive in? Is it somebody that maximizes your efforts and potential? Is it somebody that minimizes you? Is it somebody that's condescending? Or is it somebody that empowers you to reach your potential? And so understanding yourself will create a better position for you when you are interacting with potential employers in the current space as well as the future. So work on that. Okay. Cool. I just have a few more points. I promise I will be done by 7. Um, yeah, I think the next point for me is I think some things that we have have touched on, and I think Stewart also you drove this message throughout your conversation is understanding your purpose and being intentional about what you are doing. And so I think Maxi, you also mentioned this of don't do things for the sake of doing it, right? You have to be intentional about your brand. And so you'll find along the way is there will be, so like I said in the start, like your brand evolves. And when it comes to the groups and the people that you align to, it might change over time. But going back to my previous point of knowing your worth, you have to actively engage in understanding where you are, doing self-reflection, doing introspection, and understanding what your purpose is, being intentional and being deliberate. And things might change. So you might have a friendship group, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this where you've had a friendship group in high school, you've moved over to university, you're friends with like one or two of them, but you realize actually they don't align to what I want to achieve in life. They don't want to work on their academics. They want to party all the time. And yeah, I am trying to reach out for the stars, get cum laude for my degree, because I know that I want to be a doctor. I know that I want to be an investment analyst. But if I keep on doing the things that I'm currently doing that goes against who I am at this point in time, it's not going to help me attain my goals. And that's okay. It's okay to be deliberate and change your direction that suits your end goal, right? So you have to be very intentional about the delivery, intentional about the purpose that you are trying to do, and don't do things just for the sake of, okay, everybody has a LinkedIn profile and has gotten all the investment banks on their LinkedIn profile and followed them, so let me follow suit. Everybody's writing an article. Let me also write an article. And as Maxi said, now I'm writing an article about my sandwich that I just had, and it's just like, It doesn't make sense. So we need to be intentional about what our plan is and deliberate about the message that we're trying to portray. Okay. And I think in saying this leads to my next point is don't be afraid to stand out. Have you ever felt in a situation where, to my previous point, you're in the same friendship circles, maybe you haven't changed your study group, or you belong to societies and you're just like, shucks, I don't know why I'm doing this anymore. Like, I have no clue why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for the sake of doing it. And then through the motion of just, being in existence without deliberate intention, you find yourself just like sort of withering away in the crowd. Have you ever felt that? Like, where you feel like, "Ah, I'm just a number now. Like, actually, I'm just a part of the society, but I really don't know what value it's adding to my life. I don't know if I'm aligned to it." And you just feel like you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. And again, if we reel this back to a company perspective, when we look at your intention, we want you to stand out. We want you to say, I belong to the society because it made sense for me. This is the skill set that I had coming in. This is where I want to be, and this is how I'm going to grow. And so we lose sight of that sometimes, but I want you to actively engage, and I encourage you to think about the things that you're doing. Because in the job market, if we have five Bobs and five Susies that all did ballet, they all did master maths, and then they all did dance class, salsa dancing. How are we going to identify who the person that stands out if you're just the same? Right. And so I think there's a point that Maxi made about your skill sets and speaking about soft skills and hard skills. In the working world, we want to identify from the get go, does this person display a level of technical skills, which is like, Maxi gave the example of IT, you have technical skills, but then also from a soft skill perspective, what value do I add to the table? And so it can go beyond that communication. It can go like, Sia Khaleesi, am I good at decision making? Do I have the ability to persuade people to do things that I need them to do? And I think LinkedIn released a report, it must have been a few years ago, but one of the top skills that was required by business is being persuasive. And it's not necessarily the ability to do sales, but how do I influence or impact the people around me? Right. And so things like decision making, leadership qualities, and something that from our perspective at Alan Gray is we have a lot of like what I call type A personalities. They're very attentive to detail. They're very like perfectionistic, and that's all well and good, right? But going back to my previous point about being deliberate, one thing that we look out for in our client service center role is that, are you able to communicate your thoughts? Right? And underneath that is, are you able to articulate your thoughts? So sometimes you have a point that you want to communicate, but how well are you able to articulate that? And that's almost your make and break. So have you done the necessary research? Have you put effort into what you are doing? And are you deliberate about the intention that you have out for yourself, like you've panned out for yourself? And I think where people fall short quite a lot is that they have this technical skill over here, but the delivery falls short because they can't articulate, Bob, why have you done BCom investment management? I don't know. My dad said I must do it. Bob, why have you played tennis your whole life? I don't know. My dad said I must do it. And so if you can't articulate, actually, I have really good hand-eye coordination, or actually I felt that it was pretty shoddy and I needed to work on it. So I thought tennis would be a great skill because I get to play in teams. I get to join the social club for tennis, and I quite like the high tea society. And I want to work on my hand-eye coordination. And so you can start broadening your conversations because you've acknowledged what your plan is and why you are doing certain things. Right. I hope that makes sense. And I think it speaks to like a lot about owning your narrative, where you are now, where you want to be, and making sure that that's something that you're actively working on, whether it's your LinkedIn profile, whether it's meet and greet, networking events, or whatever the case may be. You have to be intentional about what you're doing. And when it comes to, your the organization, it's making that effort. And Stewart, as well as Maxi, touched on this, is making the effort. Putting in some time to have a bio, on your LinkedIn profile, looking at that image, having a neutral, a Stewart, I think you said neutral background in your slide. Probably something I'll do after this. Yeah, I don't have a banner just yet. But making the effort to showcase people that you are serious about what you want to achieve. And so Maxi spoke about doing research on companies. And that's really important, is that we, a lot of the time, from a brand perspective, we feel that some candidates are not serious because they have not Googled, they have not done any research on Alan Gray, and they come in there and we like so excited and we say, Bob, why do you want to work for Alan Gray? And they say, because you're an asset manager, like, and I've studied investment management. So of course there's an alignment, but it can't just go to that extent. We need to understand, like, maybe your values align, maybe you've heard about the growth trajectory, maybe you've heard that actually we have really great or a broad spectrum of business analyst positions. And we had a candidate that came through our process in the past 2 weeks. She attended one of our events. We encouraged her to get onto LinkedIn. She started following Maxi's tips and tricks for interviews. And then over and above that, she took the initiative to actually identify some people that are consultants in our role and started messaging them. And so instead of going on things like Glassdoor to find out about our culture, she messaged people within our space to find out what is the culture on the floor. What is Alan Gray's culture like? And she took that initiative. She was proactive because she's like, I see these comments on different websites, but let me ask people that are in the mix. Let me ask people that are in the floor. And so she took the time and effort to understand what Alan Gray means to her. And this can be any company that you're focusing on, and like Stuart spoke about being an entrepreneur. What does it mean to you? What have you done to expand your business? How have you grown your knowledge base in order to get to the goals that you want to achieve? And that's very important, to take the responsibility and take accountability for your growth trajectory in the job space. Maxi spoke about, being a candidate's market, but you cannot be identified as the candidate of choice if you're not going to put in the effort to be the top of the talent pool in our company and things like that. So try and learn about your interview structures, the way that we ask questions. Sometimes it can be case studies, sometimes it can be competency based questions. And if anybody follows me on LinkedIn, I wrote a post a few months ago about having your black book. I literally have a black book at all times, and it goes with me everywhere, in my bag. And what I do is, if I have interactions, say for example, it's like, shucks, I've experienced a bit of conflict today, I write it down, do a bit of reflection, and note, okay, maybe what could I have done differently? What was the outcome of that situation? What didn't I like? And maybe what frustrated me about that, and what I could do better in the next run. And that's just like a simple example, but there could be things like your strengths, your areas of development, because when you interact with companies, they want to understand that you've done the research on yourself. You've done introspection to understand who you are as a person. How can we hire you with absolute confidence if you yourself don't know who you are? So who are we hiring? Are we hiring Susie that was trying to be like the rest of the Susies, or are we trying to hire Susie that's displayed a level of emotional intelligence, understands how to read people, understands nuances? When somebody rolls their eyes, they're actually frustrated, so stop talking and maybe ask them, perhaps, do you have a problem? Maybe we can chat about it. So if you don't have that understanding of yourself, it's very hard for us to make a decision from a hiring perspective that you are the right candidate of choice. Okay, so I want you to actively apply that to yourself. And from what you can hear, I'm assuming you gather that a lot of it is soft skills based, that subconscious element that we are now creating awareness for ourselves and creating a conscious element. Um, and a big thing that happens within the interview realm is appearance, right? We see people on face value, just like the people and the brands, we see people on face value, but your appearance can be, yes, I mean, I have curly hair, and most days I rock my curly hair and I'm not afraid to do it. but it's fine. Like sometimes we shouldn't be shy. Well, we shouldn't at all times be shy to showcase who you are, but you can put in the effort to neaten up yourselves. So some guys like a really nice big beard, but maybe just like brush it out, make it look a bit neat, make it look a bit presentable. When you do come to interviews, and myself and Maxi have sat in interviews where the guy's playing with his beard and it's so long, and it's just like, okay, you are distracting the interviewer from the purpose. So are you more interested in your beard, or are you interested in the interaction? We don't know. We can't read that. So just be mindful of the person that you perpetuate. And it's not about being clean or dirty. It's about putting effort into yourself and knowing your worth to the person that you are portraying. Right. And I think there's a big thing. I saw a lot of articles on LinkedIn and a lot of posts about this. He's like, but I'm a student. I don't have money. I have a NSFAS funding scheme going on. Like, I'm just living day to day. Right. How am I supposed to look professional with like all these like fun clothes, suit and tie and things like that, in an interview when I can't even afford food for the next day, right? And this is the reality of South Africa. We don't live in a society where everybody is absolutely billionaires. We live in a society where a lot of students and young professionals are paying off student loans, right? That's the reality. So how do we get ourselves that clothing without necessarily spending money? So you have to be creative. And I always say, ask a friend. Myself and Maxi, we started, and Mishka is also on this call. We started doing virtual interviews for the past year. The big thing was that nobody had laptops when they went home. Everybody used to use laptops in their res or at the university. Now we're in a space where everybody needs a laptop, everybody needs internet. And myself and Maxi have seen wonderful things. I mean, we had an interview when somebody sat in ShopRite Checkers on one of those beds, and you could see the sales banners in the background, because she was like, I want this Ellen Gray interview. I will apologize up front, but I'm not going to be apologetic about trying to get an interview with internet. And it's like, she was creative. Why can't everybody be that way? Find a plan, make a plan to put your brand first. And when it comes to clothing, it's like, ask a friend. You can just wear a plain t-shirt and a blazer over and just make yourself look presentable. I think that's it from a brand perspective that I think I really want to get across from you. And I hope that is meaningful content for you to actually work on. I think in closing, what I would encourage you to do is be bold and start the conversation. And it's much, aligned to what Maxi said, what Stewart has said, is put yourself out there, follow people with intention of getting to know them. So if you follow a company, so say, for example, you follow Maxi and you follow myself, Samantha, and you just have us on your profiles, it doesn't really make sense. Start engaging, interact with our posts, get to know us, get to know some of the things, ask questions, and through that, you building your brand online. So start the conversation and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I grew up with a mother that said, like, listen, if you don't know, ask. Two things can happen. They can either say yes or they can say no, but upfront, it can be one or two options, right? So what is um, the matter with starting a conversation? And I always use this example of like going to a network event. Like, what person do you portray in this situation? And think about it in terms of your brand. Are you the person that goes to a networking event and goes straight to the snack table? Or are you the person to get two drinks, one for yourself and one for the person that you're going to chat to? Where do you stand? Are you the awkward corner holder, like, or warmer? Where are you? And then think about that in terms of your brand going forward from this conversation is, what person are you? The snacker, the drinker, the entertainer, the chatter, right? And when you're thinking about how to perpetuate your brand going forward, try to change that perception. I don't want to be a corner warmer. I am going to be intentional about my brand, and I'm going to be a conversationalist. Right. So that's it from me. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to all my words that I've said on this Friday evening. But yeah, it is time to wrap up. And yeah, if I can say anything, please do follow, I think, myself, Stewart, Maxi on LinkedIn. Myself and Maxi share a lot of content that I think will be helpful, not only for now, but for later on. So engage in the conversation, grow your network, and be intentional about your brand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. We really benefited from that presentation. Personal branding. And I think one of the most important things or the takeaways we could have taken from Sam, Maxi, and Stewart was that we must be intentional. Whatever we do it with intention. We want to improve this and we keep on doing it. Thank you for taking out your time from your busy afternoon into the evening. We appreciate that. And we also thank everyone who's on the call. This event couldn't have been successful without you as well. Thank you very much, and I hope you truly benefited. If there's any more questions, please send it to our email address, and we'll try our best to get it to the relevant people to answer those questions. And as I keep on reminding you, please make sure that you RSVP'd so that you can get all the documents which you would need to get about this session. Remember, the session is also recorded, so you'll truly benefit from everything that we discussed today. Again, thank you very much for being here. Any questions, please direct it. And as I can see, we are over time. I remember Andy had a question. I apologize for not having her not had a chance back then. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maxi, Samantha, and Stewart. Thank you so much. This was very beneficial.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Does Andili want to ask a question while we are still here?
She's still on. I think she's off. I don't see her.
Oh, I think as the presenters are still on, anyone who still wants to ask a question, they're free to. Please do. All of us will truly benefit from your question.
Sammy, your screen is still shared, eh?
Oh, sorry about that. It's quite different for me.
At least on Sammy's screen, I'm sitting up front.
Let me leave it here.
Though that's my corporate address, probably the best place and way for you to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. That's the place where we're encouraging you to grow your career. This is my corporate email address, so I typically get business email address. Yours might get drowned in there. So if you want to get a hold of me, definitely use LinkedIn. And that's the beauty of it. You don't need someone's email address. You can go into the inbox and connect with that person.
Yeah, I think same for myself and Maxi as well. Like you don't need to, Maxi you can email her. But I think in terms of linking up with us on LinkedIn, you can use our names that's upfront there with our email addresses to link up with us and let us know your thoughts, engage with us. I think that's pretty cool. But thank you very much, everybody, for a fantastic session. Thank you, Stewart. Thanks, Max.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, it looks like there's no further questions. Going once, going twice. Nothing. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Have a good
Awesome.
evening and weekend. All the best.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.